And some big news in golf. The PGA Tour announced an agreement with the Strategic Sports Group that will invest up to $3 billion into the tour's new for-profit entity. So that will be the PGA Tour Enterprises, which will run the tour's commercial efforts and remain under tour control. Now, very important here, this is not to be confused with the negotiations with the Saudi Public Investment Fund that financially backs Liv Golf. Those discussions continue after the sides extended the deadline from December 31st. Now, getting a look at a statement from the commish of the PGA Tour, Jay Monahan saying today marks an important moment for the PGA Tour and fans of golf across the world. By making PGA Tour member owners of their league, we strengthen the collective investment of our players and the success of the PGA Tour. And more statements here. This is from the PGA Tour player directors, which includes Tiger, Jordan Spieth, Patrick Cantlay, saying in part, we were proud to vote and unanimous support of this historic partnership between the PGA Tour Enterprises and SSG. It was incredibly important for us to create opportunities for the players of today and in the future to be more invested in their organization, both financially and strategically. Let's welcome in our golf analyst, Kyle Porter, to break it all down. Kyle, a lot to take in there, but just tell us exactly what this deal is, how we got here.
Well, we don't have time for how we got here, Jacqueline. That would be like a 2-hour show. But this has been something that I think most people have thought was coming for a few weeks, maybe even a few months now. You know, it's been referenced over the last kind of since the end of last year in December and then on into January. And what happened as of today is that the Strategic Sports Group could have chosen a different name. That's a difficult one to say. Like you said, it's a group of billionaire owners that have had a lot of success in a lot of different industries, baseball and basketball and international soccer and a lot of different places. They've invested $3 billion into the PGA Tour, like you said, the commercial enterprise, and that's going to be a $12 billion valuation. So that's a $3 billion that they've only given or invested, I should say, half of it so far. So the PGA Tour received $1.5 billion as an investment from this Strategic Sports Group, and this is something that is kind of unprecedented, at least for the PGA Tour, which has historically been a nonprofit organization. And as was outlined in that press release, the players are going to receive some of that. It's, to me, the way that I understand it, the way that I read it, is that it's not that different from, working at a corporation and receiving stock in that corporation, right? Whether you're at a massive company or a smaller company, you can receive stock from that company, and that's what players will receive, essentially, is equity in the business of the PGA Tour, which really ties them to future success of the tour that they currently play on.
And Kyle, we mentioned it off the top. This is not to be confused with the, of course, tour negotiations with the Saudi Public Investment Fund. But what does this mean for the PIF?
Well, that's the big question, right? Because that's the question that is going to determine what happens with the PGA Tour and Liv. And that's what everybody wants to know. A lot of the reaction today, Jacqueline, is, listen, get back to me when these entities merge together, right? I don't care about all the money. I don't care about all the business. When am I going to see Jon Rahm and Rory McIlroy playing together again? And I think you're right. It's not to be confused, but it might at some point be connected because, the theory is that if the SSG is investing $3 billion at a $12 billion valuation, that the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia could potentially invest $4 billion. So you'd have $4, and then that would leave $5 billion left for sort of the equity that the PGA Tour itself would hold. So I think that's going to be fascinating. The language right now, the talk right now is that there's a lot of legal hang up in the fact that you've got probably the two biggest golf entities in the world merging back together, which creates all sorts of antitrust issues and just a lot of stuff that, again, sports fans don't really care about, but are pertinent and paramount to those two leagues, Liv and the PGA Tour, eventually merging together.
Now, Kyle, I want to kind of circle back to what it means for the players, because you mentioned this is unprecedented for the PGA Tour, and it looks like some of the players will get equity in the business. But kind of take us through again what this means for the players that are on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, so the way that I understand it is that the PGA Tour has set aside close to $1 billion, several hundreds of millions of dollars for players to earn equity over time. And the details of that have not come out, but it's going to be a sort of performance-based, right? Where the PGA Tour is a meritocracy, or that's how it's purported over time, is that it's a straight meritocracy. And that is seemingly the way this equity will be distributed over time as well. And so the details of that are going to be very interesting because, I think my question, Jacqueline, is, okay, I can sort of understand what that means for a Rory McIlroy, a Scottie Scheffler, a Jordan Spieth, a Justin Thomas. What does that mean for the 10-year-old or the 7-year-old that is going to be on the PGA Tour 15 years from now or 20 years from now? I don't know what that's going to look like, whether the more equity is created. I don't know how all that's going to work in the future. But in a lot of ways, this is to, I think, kind of make whole the guys that did not go to Live and stayed and continue to play on and provide value for the PGA.
Now, Kyle, you mentioned, the average golf viewer is saying, hey, when am I going to see Jon Rahm and Rory battling it out on the weekend? And maybe down the line, it could go to a Live PGA Tour merge type of situation. Rory McIlroy had some words on Live. And of course, whenever he talks about Liv Golf, we are all ears. This is what he had to say.
Life is about choices. Guys made choices to go and play Live. Guys made choices to stay here. And if people still have eligibility on this tour and they want to come back and play, or you want to try to do something, let them come back. I mean, I think it's hard to punish people. I don't think there should be a punishment for, I've changed my tune on that because I see where golf is, and I see that having a diminished PGA Tour and having a diminished Live Tour or anything else is bad for both parties. Be much better being together and moving forward together for the good of the game, and that's my opinion of it. So, to me, the faster that we can all get back together and start to play and start to have the strongest fields possible, I think is great for golf.
Rory making those comments yesterday ahead of the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Certainly, as he said, Kyle, a little bit of a different tune than he's had previously when it comes to Live Golf. What were your thoughts when you heard Rory say that?
Yeah, it's definitely a flip-flop. And when you talk about all this as much as Rory, there's going to be some stuff that you're eventually going to have to go back on or say, hey, based on the information that I had at the time, I said this and I was wrong about that. And I thought he owned it pretty well. I think what's interesting about this, Jacqueline, I mean, he's right. In a lot of ways, it's not 2 tours, but it's really 3 tours that have kind of been divested and fractured and spread out. It's the DP World Tour, it's Live, and it's the PGA Tour. And if you were to somehow to combine all those, Jacqueline, that would be a really strong product, I think. So I think he's right for the good of the game. And I think what's really interesting about what Rory said is he's got the most to gain from guys being punished that are coming back from Live, right? Because he's probably the biggest name, the biggest player, the biggest star that did not go. So guys like him, Spieth, JT, Scheffler, Hovland, Morikawa, players like that, they've got a lot to gain from guys like Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka, Jon Rahm being punished if there is an eventual merger. And so I think for him to say that is actually a little bit of an admirable thing because, again, he's incentivized to say the opposite. Hey, punish those guys. I don't want them to come back. I don't, whatever. And I think it's pretty admirable because I think he's putting the sport, the game, the entire entity above maybe his personal preferences.
Kyle Porter joining us here on HQ. We certainly appreciate it, breaking down that big news in golf with the PGA Tour finalizing a deal with the Strategic Sports Group. Thanks so much, KP. And of course, you can hear Kyle Porter on the First Cut podcast alongside Rick Gaiman, Patrick McDonald, and Mark Immelman. The crew always breaking down the latest in the world of golf. You can scan that QR code to listen right now or wherever you find your pods.